Today we're still in Proverbs. We're in lesson 4. It's wisdom, instruction for right living, and the text is chapters 11 through 13. But we're going to focus on chapter 13 today, so that's what our focus is. And starting with chapter 10, the Proverbs of Solomon contain a life of somewhat disconnectable sayings that address a wide range of subjects. Here, the disconnectable is a broken or absent relationship with God, oneself, or the community of believers, often caused by sin, is what causes a lot of this. Many of the Proverbs give instruction for wise use of our words. We have to be careful with our words. Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man." So, and James tells us here, he warns us about our tongue. In James chapter 3 and verse 8 it says, "But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly evil, full of deadly poison." Our tongue can be really bad. James says they're unruly, they can't be tamed. We have to be careful. We really do have to be careful. The Proverbs can be a salt we need to graciously flavor and purify our words. And in chapter 13 and verse 1, "A wise son heareth his father's instruction, but a scorner heareth not rebuke." In other words, a wise person hears and heeds his father's instruction, but the scorner does not listen. He says, "I don't need to listen to what my father says. I know what I'm doing. I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do." He's the one who talks arrogantly and boastfully. He mocks, derides, and scoffs. And here, I know nobody's ever run across this. He's always right, thinks he knows more than everyone else about everything when he knows nothing. So I think we've all run across people like that think they know it all. And then verses 2 and verse 3, "A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth, but the soul of the transgressor shall eat violence. He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction." In other words, words proceeding from the mouth bear fruit. Words rightly used accomplish good. Words prompted by the soul, the desire of the transgressor, are destructive. The admonition of these verses is to be aware that words spoken continue. Be careful what you say. Once you say something, you can't take that back. It's already been said. You can apologize and ask forgiveness, but it's always there. You can't take it back. So we have to be careful what we say and how we talk to people. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29 tells us, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." So again, Paul tells us not to let any corrupt communication come out of our mouth. Now in verse 4, "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat." In other words, the sluggard or the lazy person desires but has nothing because he doesn't want to get out and work for it. He wants somebody to give it to him. He doesn't want to have to put out any effort. Where the diligent person works, and all his needs are supplied to him. He goes out and works, has everything he needs, God takes care of him. Now, if you go back to chapter 10 and verse 4, that tells us, "He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich." In verse 5, "A righteous man hateth lying, but a wicked man is loathsome and cometh to shame." In other words, he's always wanting to cause trouble, never satisfied. And here, the righteous, they hate falsehood. A righteous person not only avoids lies, but he actually despises them, seeing them as contrary to God's truth. The wicked are loathsome. They're wicked individuals who often practice dishonesty, become repulsive and disgusting to others. The deceptive behavior of the wicked is unsustainable and ultimately leads to their downfall and public shame. In other words, they're going to answer for what they do. They're going to pay for it eventually. Verse 6, righteousness keepeth him that is upright in the way, but the wickedness overthroweth the sinner. In other words, the Proverbs highlight that our choices in life have significant consequences. So we have to, when our choices, we're going to pay for that, whatever. If they're good, we're going to be rewarded for good, but if they're bad choices, we're going to pay for those. A life of righteousness marked by good deeds, uprightness is blessed and preserved, while the wickedness leads to inevitable destruction. And in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 5 tells us, the righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. In other words, he's going to... And in verse 6 of chapter 11, the righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but the transgressor shall be taken in their own naughtiness. Verse 7, there is that maketh himself rich, yet hath nothing. There is that maketh himself poor, yet hath great riches. In other words, there are those who pretend to be rich and have nothing, but they want everyone to think they're rich. And there are those who seem poor and have great riches. This tells us worldly riches begin with little satisfaction in life. Now in verse 8, the ransom of a man's life are his riches, but the poor heareth not rebuke. A rich person may use their wealth to get themselves out of trouble, such as paying off false accusers, kidnappers, or thieves, to save their life or property. In other words, if you have a lot, it's an invitation for people. They're going to come and try and get it from you. Where a poor person is less likely to be targeted by robbers or kidnappers because they have no wealth to steal. And now in verse 9, the light of the righteousness rejoices, but the lamp of the wicked shall be put out. In other words, the righteous have a lasting, joyful, spiritual, and material prosperity. It's symbolized as a bright, shining light, whereas the wicked prosperity and influence are temporary and will eventually be extinguished like a flickering lamp that goes out. This is a contrast of the enduring legacy of those who follow God with the futile and bleak end of those who live in opposition to divine wisdom. So you have a choice there. You can go both, either way. One way is going to be a prosper for you, the other way is going to be destruction for you. Now verse 10, only by pride cometh contention, but with the well advised is wisdom. The arrogance, the inflated view that one's opinion is superior is the cause of contention. In contrast is wisdom of open-minded consideration of new ideas and other opinions. Verse 11, wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase. In other words, wealth acquired by dishonest or questionable means shall not be permanent, but that gained by honest labor shall increase. We know the Lord frowns upon dishonesty, but blesses that which is honorable and just. Verse 12, hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desireth cometh, it is a tree of life. Hope deferred depresses the heart or the mind, but when that which is desired cometh to pass, it's a source of renewed spiritual life. This also suggests care in making and keeping promises to others, lest through carelessness, needless discouragement be caused. In other words, if you're going to make a promise to somebody, keep that promise, because the person you're making a promise to is counting on that promise. And then if you don't keep it, he's going to be depressed or not feel right, feel sad. So we have to be careful. If we're going to make a promise, make sure we keep that promise. Verse 13, whoso despiseth the word shall be destroyed, but he that feareth the commandment shall be rewarded. Now we're recognizing the existing religious teachings and practices of Israel, and emphasizes the importance of obeying the Scriptures. He who does so will be rewarded, but he who scorns the message will suffer grievous consequences here and thereafter. So again, you have to be careful. Verse 13, the law of the wise is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. This declares that the law or the teachings followed by the wise is a source of spiritual refreshment, also protection from traps that ensnares us. And then Proverbs, if you're going up to Proverbs chapter 14, verse 27, the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, so depart from the snares of death. In other words, it's another quote of chapter 13, verse 14. It's quoted again in chapter 14. The good understanding, this refers to acting with sense, prudence, insight, particularly in understanding and following God's command. It suggests having a deep, practical comprehension of how to live a righteous life. And this giveth favor here is people with good understanding are granted grace and acceptance, not only in civil matters, but also in the sight of God and other people. Their actions may make them seem appealing and respectable. But the way of the transgressor is hard. This signifies that the lifestyle of those who deviate from wisdom in God's law, their path is rough, leading to complications and struggles rather than ease. Chapter 13 and verse 16. Every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly. The prudent man, he acts wisely in accord with the knowledge of the matter. A fool's actions, words, and thoughts are often transparent, making their lack of understanding and wisdom evident to everyone. So, verse 17, a wicked messenger falleth into mischief, but a faithful ambassador is health. Here we have, this suggests caution in selecting an agent, because of a wicked representative will likely become involved in mischief, adversely affecting those he represents. But a faithful ambassador will perform his mission in a manner to the advantage and well-being of those he serves. Be careful who you choose to represent you, to serve you. You want somebody that's going to be honest and think of your well-being and your good. You don't want somebody who's going to try and take advantage of you or behind the scenes, go behind your back and try and do something. Verse 18, poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction, but he that regardeth reproof shall be honored. To refuse such leads to poverty and shame, which have eternal implications. But to accept corrections is wise, leads to honor and security. So you can either accept the correction or you can not accept it. Verse 19, the desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but is an abomination to fools to depart from evil. Achieving a good, soul-satisfying goal is sweet to the righteous, while fools despise turning from their wicked ways. In other words, A fool, he doesn't want to turn from the way he is. He'd rather do his way rather than go and be like a wise person. Verse 20, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. In other words, he that walketh with wise, he's going to become wise if you walk with wise people. You're going to become wise. Those who keep company with fools shall be destroyed or suffer harm. In other words, if you're constantly hanging around with foolish people and fools, you're going to end up being the same way, and somewhere along the line you could be hurt by that. And then verse 21, evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. In other words, trouble is always chasing after sinners. There's trouble always there. There's always chasing after them. Those who seek to live by the righteousness of God shall be rewarded. Verse 22, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children, and the wealth of the sinners is laid up for the just. In other words, a righteous person plans for the future, leaving a lasting legacy, both materially and spiritually, for their children and grandchildren, while a sinner's ill-gotten gains will ultimately benefit the righteous, either as a form of divine justice or through their future use for good purposes. In other words, a righteous man, he plans. The fool, he doesn't plan, but whatever he is still going to end up going to the righteous. Verse 23, much food is in the tillage of the poor, but that is destroyed for want of judgment. This phrase here, much food is in the fallow ground of the poor, suggests that even small plots of land worked diligently by the poor can yield a significant harvest. And the destruction by injustice. The latter part of the verse explains that this abundance potential is swept away through injustice, in other words. Verse 24, he that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. There's the importance of proper and timely correction of a child, including use of the rod when required. Now that doesn't mean you take a stick and just start wailing on him and beat him to death. Such is necessary because the first, foolishness is in the heart of the child and needs to be dealt with early. If it's not corrected, will bring shame to the parents and may lead to a Christless death. Failure to correct is both failure to love as a parent should and disregard for the commands of God. Correction is to be administered in the spirit Solomon's parents demonstrated, and which he exhibited 20 times in the first 7 chapters of Proverbs. Excess is to be avoided. Properly administered correction will bring peace of mind and delight to faithful parents.
Brother Frank?
Yes.
Kids don't respect their parents, they'll never respect anybody else.
That's very true, brother. That's very true.
I can remember as a kid, if I got in trouble at school, that wasn't the trouble. The trouble would be when I got home.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a real issue in the culture in which we grow up today.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids that disrespect their parents. They don't.
Too many parents want to be their kid's friend.
Yeah, that's right. That doesn't always work. That doesn't always work. You can be their friend, but you got to discipline them when it's necessary. Brother Larry, you had a comment?
When I was in school, my dad told me, if you get a whipping in school, that's just the start. When you get home, you get a real one.
Yeah. It was that way when we were growing up. We knew if we got it at school, we was going to get it when we got home, too.
That's about it. My dad had told me to take out the trash while he was gone. Came back, the trash was still there, and he said, why didn't you take out the trash? And I said, I just really didn't feel like taking out the trash. And I remember his foot on my backside of the trash bag.
That was the wrong thing to say to your dad. You didn't feel like it. You answered for that.
You know, and you go to the store, and, you know, you see some kid smart back.
Oh, I know it.
I want to walk over there and smack him.
Yeah. Why don't you discipline those kids? Come on, you know.
Ours were 5 or 6, and they were going on in Walmart, and on and on. I said, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. And he just kept on and on. And directly I yanked both twins. I yanked them up and started swatting butts.
No.
I'll clear that. Somebody turned me into, CPS and Child Protection Services now, but.
I know you'd have to get in all kinds of trouble, but I know.
And, and my wife and I, same vein, you disrespect my wife, you disrespect me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You disrespect me.
That's right. That's right.
We might not have always agreed on everything, but we didn't disagree in front of the kids.
No, you never want to do that in front of the kids, because the kids they'll play one against the other one. So much so.
No way.
No way. You've never run across that?
No, our grandkids are playing us against their mother.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know when my children were growing up, they knew better than to act up in Walmart or wherever we were, because they knew they would get it. They'd get it right there in the store, like you just said with your twins.
So I read something somewhere that said when I was a kid, my parents disciplined me, so now I have a thing called respect.
Yeah, that's right.
Some people, goodness, you just see that, a portion of their lives. And then as a parent, they can like you later. And I actually said that to my teenage daughter, and what teenagers always do. One time she's mad about something, she said, I'm going to call CPS, and I handed her my phone. I said, yeah. I said, the phone number's on my phone. Go right ahead. And she said, I hate you. And I said, you can hate me now. I said, you can love me later.
That's right, that's right.
And now, good kid.
They love you now because once they're adults now,
They understand.
they understand and they know. Exactly, they know.
Mother's curse. I hope your kids treat you like you're treating me.
Yeah. Oh.
When Brother Wright was here, his youngest daughter and our daughter were very close.
Mm-hmm.
And one Sunday they were sitting between Ken and I, and our daughter was sitting next to him, and Rachel was sitting next to me. And they just kept whispering during the message, and Ken told them 3 times to hush. Well, in the meantime, unbeknownst to him, Rachel had went over by him, and my daughter had come over by me. And when they kept chattering, he just reached around and swatted her in the face.
Without even looking.
Without even looking, yeah.
I thought I was getting June, and I got Rachel.
Instead.
I guarantee you, they were fought from every time after that.
I bet they were too. They're being disciplined that one time. They knew better than to do it the next time. That's for sure.
At our church in Noblesville, Bethel, I watched Regina Motley march her grandson in a switch in her hand.
Oh my goodness.
Sat next to her, and he did not move.
He did not move a muscle. He was afraid. He didn't want that switch to be used on him. Oh. Okay, we got one more verse and then we're done. So, verse 25, the righteous eateth to the satisfying of his soul, but the belly of the wicked shall want. In other words, this contrast, the assurance that material needs of the righteous will be supplied with the forecast that the wants and cravings of the wicked shall eventually be denied. The soul in this verse here refers to desire or appetite. And that's all I have for the lesson today. Any other comments, Bob?
I don't know about Brother Kennedy, Brother Don, Brother Johnston, Brother Craig, but one thing that I think about when I look at the Proverbs, in chapter 13, I see 25 sermons. Every proverb that we call chapter each verse can be divided into, just as you were talking about behavior of children and stuff like that.
Right.
I was looking back at Proverbs chapter 6, and verses 16 through 19, and it lists 7 things that God hates. Now, if you look at each one of those things, there's a sermon there, and there's a depth of information that every church member needs in order to live the right kind of life. And throughout this thing that just this one chapter that we looked at now, I mean, look at each one of those chapters and think about how many verses in the Bible are covering that exact same thing, and they can be brought together in their context, and you'd have something that you could probably preach for a couple of weeks.
Oh, at least.
That's a recommendation I make to people. You're doing your Bible study, whatever your Bible study is, maybe you're in the Old Testament, maybe you're in the New Testament, read a proverb a day.
Exactly.
Whatever the day of the month it is. On the first of the month, read Proverbs 1. On the second of the month, read Proverbs 2. You get to the end of the month, there's an extra day to read something else, but come back the next month and do it again. Month after month after month, you see new things. You come back to it. You never exhaust it. Absolutely.
Yeah, you always learn something new each time you go back through it. And if you notice, when we were going through there, the focus is wisdom. Of how you either accept wisdom or you're denying wisdom. And it tells you the effects of either way. If you accept it, you're going to receive good. If you reject it, you're going to receive problems all the way through.
Not just sermons, but counseling. With anger. And I said, I want you to take a book of Proverbs, every verse that you can find about anger. The nature of Hebrew poetry, doesn't rhyme by word, but rhymes by theme or subject.
To anyone else?
That word, want, means lacking something. This is David said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I think saved people have a different view about things, or they should have a different view about things, because the instruction for us is not on whatever condition we find ourselves, therewith be content.
Exactly.
And for us, that's kind of hard. But the world plays on that want thing. You don't have the newest and greatest and best. And I know everyone say, well, everything is getting more expensive. Well, it most certainly is getting more expensive. I think that God's people should have an attitude that everything that we have is temporary. Nothing is permanent.
That's true.
The only thing permanent that we have is our heavenly home.
And that's what we should focus on, is our heavenly home. What we can do to put in our heavenly home rather than down here on this earth. And there's everybody that has everything, it's never enough. They always want a little bit more and a little bit more.
Old farmer, I was talking about this car I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And I had a 72 Camaro. It was okay about another car. I can still to this day remember saying, well, if you're not happy with the one you got, what makes you think you'd be happy with that one?
It's true.
And those words have echoed in my mind. Cell phones, I don't get them. I'll wear my cell phone out till it absolutely falls apart. And I have to get a new one, I'm the guy that rush out and get the latest, greatest, newest thing. I'm happy with what Lord's gave.
Well, that's right. I'm happy with what I got. I don't need something new. Basically all I know how to do is to call and not call, or maybe text, and it takes me forever to text anything, so.
Always laughing with a guy at church who still has a flip phone.
Yeah, I know. You don't see those anymore. I mean, those are supposed to be a thing of the past.
That's his statement. Well, I need one of those phones for.
Yeah, this one works just fine. Okay.
I was just looking at chapter 12 and verse 4. I like the first part of that verse. It says, a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband. And I know there are some women probably a little bit like the crown their husband.
They probably literally, yeah.
But there's so many good things in here, you know.
There's a lot of good things there.
You know, like one chapter, you know, like this, and then all these points you have that we can look at, comparing them to other things. And here's, you know, this is a good one. It says, but she that maketh ashamed is a rottenness in his bones. And what we can look there is talking about weddings and marrying and what you need to look for in the husband, what you need to look for in the wife. Everybody looks at the opportunity of getting divorced if I don't like it. And now, marriage is gone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched Judge Judy on TV. Almost every one of those people that get on there, most of them have been not married at all, but they have babies to about, 5 different people. And there's so much in here about marriage and what to look for. When you're looking for a woman or you're looking for a husband, you're looking for somebody that God says, you're together forever, as long as you live on this earth.
That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be.
We had a couple in our church, if Paul and Nelma Lecker, and if Paul would have lived another 3 months, they would have been married 75 years. I don't know that I ever saw them at home, in public, in church. He didn't have his arm around his wife. He wouldn't hold her hand. I remember we had a 60th anniversary of church, and we knocked out a couple songs from the morning worship service, and I got rocking chairs set on the stage, and I let people ask questions. Everybody asked Paul questions. Came my turn, and I asked Nelma. Nelma loves to laugh, and I said, okay, Nelma. I said, 60 years. I said, you're in church, you can't lie. 60 years. Have you ever thought about divorce? She said, divorce no, murder, yes. Everybody laughed, just like me. I said, no, I'm serious. How have you made it 60 years? What she said to me, I still share with young couples, people that are pre-marriage counseling, and she said, I meant what I said on my wedding day.
That's the way it was with me with my first wife. She passed and went to be with the Lord in April. August, we would have been married 50 years. So, when you said that, I thought about that. So.
And that's missing. A lot of people go into marriage, well, if this doesn't work, we can.
Yeah.
Plan B, there is no plan B. Plan A.
It's like Brother Bob said, it's supposed to be a lifetime commitment. There's no getting out of it.
Well, the sweet part of it is getting through all that stuff.
That's the challenge.
That's what makes marriage richer and deeper. So,
Yeah, just look at my wife. He was talking about 75 years marriage. Take that 7 and that 5, flip them around, and you can see what punishment she's been through.
We really need to pray for Joanne,
Too late.
Too late now.
That was the verse you read, Proverbs 12:4, a virtuous woman is a crown.
Yeah.
She gets the crown.
Yeah.
You notice I didn't read that part of it.
No, you left that part of it out.
Typical preacher's way of getting it.
Yeah.
But there's so much we can look at in here, verse by verse.
I wish the way they designed this, they cover 4 or 5 chapters. I wish they would just take one chapter at a time and do that. We'd get, like Bob said, we get so much more out of it by doing it that way.
Each chapter is a step, and that's where we lose out. Each chapter is a step.
Always teach teachers that book is not your lesson. Your lesson is sitting in your room, in your audience there. And if there's something that needs to be said or something that comes up there, you throw that book away. And you pause on that lesson. You can go back to that later on. You know, success for a teacher is not getting through their lesson. Success for a teacher is, you know, making a connection with those people that are underneath them. And so, you know, there have been plenty of times I've been in a sermon, and I couldn't get past point one. Right? I just tell them, okay, next Sunday, point two.
Thank you, brother. I needed that encouragement. I needed that encouragement.
I think that as an associated worker, our Sunday school committee, we're too hip on getting through this Bible in 10 years. You know, you need to go slower and learn.
Exactly, exactly.
Just getting through it in 10 years is not going to get the job done.
And again, for me, and the way that I teach, that's a springboard. You know, that springboard might jump into a whole bunch of other things, but meeting the needs of those that are there. And I think God's Word has a great way of doing that. You know, we got to get people into it.
Practical application.
Yeah,
If it doesn't, if you can't apply it, no sense talking about it.
that's true. That's true. Shayla?
So to dovetail off that, one of the practical things in the young adult class we were going to talk about is that speech part. And I definitely need to always think a little harder. But that acronym, they say think before you speak.
Yeah.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Is that helpful? Because boy, a lot of times what you say is not helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be said. Is it important, right, to the situation? Is it necessary? Again, not everything needs to be said. And is it kind?
Yeah.
You know, where sometimes I think people are a little self-righteous about, oh, well, they need to hear it. But if it's tearing somebody down and not lifting them up, which
No.
we're called to do, you know, with brothers and others outside the church, it's,
Yeah, our goal, yeah, like I say, is to lift people up and not, you know. And you're right, some things, they don't need to be said. And you really don't know that unless you get into a conversation with a person and you can pick up on it. Well, I need to really tell them about this, but maybe this isn't the time for it.
and
Maybe this isn't the time for it.
that wisdom, right, that we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, it's still like experience of, you know, those things ingrained a little more, I think. It's something that is important to think about.
You're right.
I just got a good book and tape or the DVD that you gave me, and that book is a good one on study and preparation and how to take things apart, dig them out. I can't remember what the name of it is anymore. I still got it in my library, but I've given that advice to others to look into that because that's really great.
Can't apply it, you're wasting time.
Yeah, right.
That's true. That's true.
Somewhere along the way, you know, you give a man a fish, he'll be happy for a day. And you got to teach him to fish. Just me, I think that a lot of the churches are missing that. You know, somebody told me that in Yellowstone every year, at the beginning of spring, they go out and they find one-year-old bears that are just dead. And they pick them up, and somebody was asking why they're just a 1-year-old. Well, when the tourists were there, they would eat out of the trash cans, they'd eat everything that the tourists left behind, but when the tourists left, they'd never learned to fend for themselves. They starved to death. I think that's a major issue in our churches.
Yep.
We have some great teachers, we have some great preachers, but if you don't pick it up and you know, feed for yourself, you're going to starve to death.
That's true. Anyone else have comment?
Sorry to go everywhere.
No, that's all right, brother. That's okay. I appreciate your comments, I really do. If there's no other comments, Brother Kennedy, would you dismiss us today, please?